Terrence Bradley, Terrence Bradley, Bradley.
Ms. Merchant.
Thank you, Judge. Good afternoon, Mr. Bradley.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you. Sorry, under these circumstances. I'm going to just go straight to where we left off before. Fani Willis and Nathan Wade were in a romantic relationship, correct?
Correct.
And it began at the time that they were both municipal court judges, correct?
Objection, Your Honor, based on privilege. That would be covered in the attorney-client privilege.
Okay, overruled.
I do not have knowledge of it starting or when it started.
Terrence, you told me that it started when they were both municipal court judges, though, correct?
That is incorrect.
You never confirmed in writing that it was, instead of magistrate court, it was in municipal court when they started dating?
If you're speaking of the text message, you can go to that text message and you can read that text message, and I will explain the text message to you. But you and I did not have a conversation about when it started. You asked a compound question of magistrate court versus, you said it was magistrate court, you said magistrate court conference, I'm sorry. And then you asked another question. I said, no, municipal court, nothing else.
I'm referring to a different conversation. I asked you, do you think it started before she hired him?
And I'm going to object. This was covered in the previous hearing where Mr. Bradley said he had no personal knowledge of the exact text that Ms. Merchant is speaking of and actually used in an attempt to refresh his recollection, and he explained exactly what he's explaining here before the court. So this is repetitive and unnecessary. So I would object to asked and answered and relevance at this point.
All right, perhaps we'll get there, but I think first Ms. Merchant has the right to draw his attention to the exact, potentially inconsistent statement.
Thank you, Judge. May I approach him?
It's overruled.
This
You
is
may.
the text I gave you. Of you. This one I gave you at the last hearing.
And for purposes of the record, I believe, Ms. Merchant, you tendered, was it the entire text chain as an exhibit?
I only tendered a few of the texts, but I did give the state their courtesy copies last time of the exhibits.
Was this one tendered?
This one was not tendered.
All right.
And I'm happy to tender it.
Well, we'll just take it as it comes, whatever you
We're
need.
at, I think we're at 39. I will wait to mark it, but I think we're at 39. May I approach, Judge?
You may.
All right. So, Terrence, do you remember telling me that it started when she left the DA's office and was a judge in South Fulton?
I see the message there, but I don't recall. I do see that message, but I do not recall.
You don't recall texting this?
I look back at my text messages through that we've had. I see that message, but I do not recall that. No, ma'am.
And when I asked you if you thought it started before she hired him, and you responded absolutely.
Your Honor, I'm going to object as to the source of the information that Mr. Bradley allegedly gathered this from. There's been absolutely no foundation, and based on the arguments at the last hearing, that a lot of this is based on gossip, innuendo, assumption, and privileged information. And at this point, Ms. Merchant has not provided a foundation as to how Mr. Bradley would have any information that she keeps referring to.
All right. I think that's... Go ahead, Ms. Merchant.
I didn't ask him about the source of the information. And under Rule 621, I can impeach him with any inconsistent facts. This is an inconsistent fact. I can impeach him with any contrary facts.
Sure.
This is a
Why would
contrary
it
fact.
be a relevant impeachment if he actually has no personal knowledge of this?
If he doesn't.
Sure. So I think you have to lay that foundation then, so that'll be sustained.
Do you remember telling me that it began?
Well, that doesn't address the issue.
No, I'm not. I was just asking if you remember telling me as opposed to the
Okay,
text.
sure.
Do you remember telling me that it began?
Well, no, then you're going into the substance of it, which we haven't determined whether he actually knows or how he knows.
You told me, in fact, you corrected me when I said magistrate court. You corrected me and said it was municipal court. Do you remember that?
Same objection, Your Honor.
This is the exact same issue, right?
Well, I'm
Yeah,
asking if he remembers that. He hasn't answered that question yet.
right, but the relevance of whether he remembers it isn't established until we know how he remembers it or why he knows it. If that makes sense. I guess not.
Sorry. How he knows it, I'm just asking if he told me that.
Right.
So I wasn't asking how he knew that. I wasn't asking the source of that knowledge. I was asking if he told me that.
Sure.
That was it.
But that's the point. It's how he knows it.
Right.
The source of his knowledge, the state would contend, is hearsay because it's gossip and innuendo, which is what was indicated at the last hearing.
Well, it may not be hearsay. It may not be gossip. We haven't really gotten there yet. We don't know how he knows what apparently he's telling her, and I think we need to figure that out before we can go any further.
Yes. And if the source of the information is a witness who've testified, then it's not hearsay. So when did the relationship start?
I cannot answer that.
When was your first knowledge of the relationship?
Objection, Your Honor. He's already answered that question multiple times today. He said he had no idea the timeline or when it occurred. That was one of the first questions that Ms. Murphy asked.
I didn't ask when. I asked his first knowledge. He testified he has knowledge that they had a relationship. I asked him when he first got knowledge of that.
Okay, so if the question is, when did you first get knowledge, I think we can start there.
That was the question, yes.
All right.
Thank you. When did you first get knowledge of their relationship?
I've said over again that I didn't have any personal information where I could personally say when it started. I've said that time and time again. So I don't know when the relationship started.
And that wasn't my question. So my question is, when did you first gain knowledge? I didn't ask the source of the knowledge, didn't ask you to comment on the validity of the knowledge. I asked when you first had knowledge.
We'll get to the how, Mr. Abadi. So I'll note the objection, overrule it. You can answer that.
Just for the record, and I appreciate Your Honor. But he said he has no personal knowledge, so it's clear he had to gain the knowledge, not from hearsay.
He could have gained it from
Sure.
Mr. Wade.
Well, I mean, most of us learn things from hearsay. The question of whether it's admissible, right? And that's what we got to get to. So,
I apologize.
Right. When did you first get knowledge? I'm not qualifying what type of knowledge. I'm just asking when you first knew about the relationship.
I don't know how to answer that. I mean, so I can't give you a date if you're asking for a date. If you're asking me, how did I get the knowledge? It would have come directly from my client.
Right.
So help me understand.
I think you say you can't answer that question. You don't know the date. So that's the answer to the question.
But I said that 5 minutes ago.
We have to make it clear.
Yes, sir.
Next